Good evening and welcome to After Dark, kindly described by this morning's Guardian as the most civilised and stimulating of television programmes. Now, throughout today, an estimated 1 billion people around the world joined in celebrating jailed African National Congress leader Nelson Mandela's 70th birthday. Hosting this musical party at Wembley Stadium was Harry Belafonte, who is with us tonight, as we hope to stimulate you further with a discussion on the options facing South Africa. Is the future continued repression or revolution? And is a middle way an irrelevance? The South African government has, within the past 24 hours, announced an extension and intensification of the two-year-old state of emergency, whose restrictions effectively censor the international press and broadcasting media. Domestically, it silences opposition and bans organised dissent. Prime Minister and President P.W. Botha asserts that these measures, plus imprisonment without trial, accompanied by alleged torture of children, are all necessary because, and I quote him, revolution is in the air. He's referring, of course, to the black townships where confrontations with police and military are frequent, who knows, maybe daily. He's also referring to the outlawed, some would say terrorist, ANC. Abroad, awareness of apartheid has increased amid demands for sanctions on those whose businesses trade or have interests in the apartheid republic. But would sanctions work? Would they ever be applied? Or is South Africa's plutonium too important for the West's security for matters of conscience to get in the way? And what of the superpowers and the frontline states which make up the rest of Southern Africa? What superpower strategic game is being played around the sadly misnamed Cape of Good Hope? Now with me are Harry Belafonte, singer, actor, filmmaker and political activist, a banned person in South Africa. He's about to put into production a Hollywood TV blockbuster on the life of the Mandela family, starring Sidney Poitier, Marlon Brando and Jane Fonda. A backstreet Harlem kid whose mother passed as white, about which I hope he'll tell us some more a little later. Nick Mitchell, well, let me explain. We invited Rio Tinto Zinc, Consolidated Gold and Barclays Bank to take part in this discussion, but they refused. Instead, they nominated the United Kingdom South Africa Trade Association, UCSATA, to represent their case. Nick Mitchell is the Executive Director of UCSATA, as well as being the Director General of the British Industry Committee on South Africa. They say, we resist the idea of being anti-apartheid means being a member of the anti-apartheid movement. Ismail Ayob is Mandela's lawyer and has been for the past 16 years. He can tell us not only how Nelson Mandela is coping in his 25th year of imprisonment, but also what it's like as a non-white living in South Africa today. Denis Worrall, during the 80s, he was his country's ambassador, first to Australia, then from 1984 until last year to this country. He resigned from the job to form his own political party, the aims and ambitions of which we shall hear as the discussion unfolds. He missed election to the present South African Parliament by a mere 39 votes. Victoria Brittain is a journalist specialising in Third World affairs. She's worked for the BBC and is currently editor of the Guardian Third World Review. Her latest book is Hidden Lives, Hidden Deaths, South Africa's Crippling of a Continent. She's just returned from Angola. Breyten Breytenback is an Afrikaans poet and writer. He settled in Paris in the early 60s as a voluntary exile. A return visit home to South Africa in 1975 resulted, as he'll no doubt tell us, in 7.5 years as a political prisoner, the first 2 years of which were spent in solitary confinement. At least some of these experiences are described in his book, Confessions of an Albino Terrorist. And last, but by no means least, Essop Pahad, an ANC representative in London. He's born in the Transvaal and he remembers Mandela and other ANC leaders meeting in his parents' house. He came to England to do a PhD in South African politics and has been here now for 20 years, always working for the ANC. His father and 3 of his brothers still live in South Africa. Harry Belafonte, may I start with you and ask you, first of all, how was the day? Was it enjoyable?
I would say that for those of us who have for a long time been focused on and deeply concerned about the atrocities that take place in South Africa, for us it was a great victory. Beyond the fact that we had an opportunity as artists to use ourselves as eloquently as I have ever seen us use ourselves in the service of the humanity, namely the hopes and the aspirations of a people in the pursuit of their freedom and their human rights. It gave us an opportunity to give people who have been frustrated in the ability to express their concerns about what's going on in South Africa. We gave them a platform. For 60 stations around the world to have carried this broadcast, 72 to 80,000 people to have been in Wembley Stadium today, for tens of millions of people to have viewed this event, I think is testimony to the fact that there is an intense global consciousness and a desire on the part of many people to see this abhorrent system end and the people of South Africa achieve their rightful ends.
You mentioned a global consciousness. I wonder what impact such an event will have. I'm not trying to minimise it at all, but I'd like, in your words, I'd like to know your appreciation of what happened at Wembley. For example, I'll tell you what's in the back of my mind. In America, this event is being edited down from 10 hours to 6 and is being billed as a freedom fest. And the suspicion has been this side of the Atlantic that references to Mandela will be minimal.
Well, I believe that the platform did not afford many people to have the opportunity to go into political polemics. But I think if you saw the picture of the event itself, the single largest sign in the place that is impossible for cameras to miss said Nelson Mandela. So I think no one is at all confused as to the reason for the event. It clearly focused on Nelson Mandela. It was about his 70th birthday. People referred to the fact that he's been in prison for a quarter of a century. So I think there was no ambivalence about why the day existed. I think many stations that came had logistical problems. There's a vast difference in time between the United States and Great Britain. Colleagues in Europe and other places that picked up the broadcast had their own programming difficulties. So everyone had their own choice as to the system that would best fit the environment that they were broadcasting to.
But in a phrase, you assess the impact as being great?
Yes. First of all, no event in history that I know of has ever taken place such as this, where artists came together and regardless of ideology and regardless of other persuasions, came together in a unified way to make a statement about the conditions of a fellow human being and fellow human beings.
Ismail Ayob, you know this fellow human being, Nelson Mandela. You are his lawyer. First of all, how do you think he'd respond to this kind of an event? You must have spoken to him fairly recently.
I saw him sometime in March. That was before I knew about the concert, so I couldn't tell him anything about it. I do know that his wife, Winnie Mandela, has spoken to him about it, and he was absolutely delighted that such an event was to take place. I think it would give him a great deal of hope for the future, that there's so many people who cared for him today. And I think Harry's wrong. It's not tens of millions. I've been told that there were close to 1 billion people watching the program today.
What is the state, if I can use such a clumsy word, inelegant word, of Nelson Mandela at present, physically, emotionally, spiritually?
Physically, he's in very good condition. He exercises for about 2 hours every morning. He reads a large number of newspapers. He's studying for a further law degree. Mentally, he's sharper than anyone I've ever known. It's a pleasure to have a client like him. When I take his instructions, he'd start with the first item, go through it, and then lead on to the next item, and there may be 10 separate instructions. And not once would he go back to any of the earlier ones, and he doesn't use notes.
Essop Pahad, you grew up with Nelson Mandela. He was around your kitchen table. What impact do you think this will have on him in particular, and also the movement of which he is the head?
Can I say that it's already had a tremendous impact in South Africa? And it's very interesting that, as usual in South Africa, you have two, if you like, contradictory impact. You have the impact insofar as the South African regime is concerned and their supporters, so they are opposed to it. And you have the impact of the people of South Africa. And all of the information we've had is that it has had such a tremendous impact on the people that everybody just wants to see a video of this concert. We know already that the people in Portsmouth prison, who are in the same prison as Mandela is, have heard about this, have written to some people saying that Walter Sisulu, who you must realize is over 75 years old, and Kathrada, who will be 60 next year, want the young people to know that they are the real fans of Whitney Houston, and that they were very happy that this concert is taking place and that Whitney Houston was going to participate in it. So I would agree with what Harry said earlier. Insofar as South Africa is concerned, certainly it has had a most marvelous impact. Let me add, for myself, being at Wembley Stadium today and having been involved for a very long time in the struggle, that it was a deeply emotional experience to see thousands and thousands of young people coming to Wembley Stadium, not only responding to the music of their favorite pop group, but responding to the political message that came out, which is that apartheid must end,
Now, how can
and
you
that
gauge,
Nelson Mandela must be liberated.
how can you separate the